All right. Well, welcome to the final cast. And I am starting a new series within our channel here that is highlighting some of the area clubs and organizations that are now going to be uh, taking you through the grassroots of kayak fishing, and then also at the same time hosting a lot of tournaments and different things. So this week we're going to have Mitch from Central Carolina Kayak Fishing joining us. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the final cast. All right, Mitch. Well, welcome to the final cast, sir.
Thank you, sir. I'm glad to be here.
So Mitch and I have this very weird relationship that has kind of stemmed from when I was down in Florida to me moving into the Carolinas, and we've kind of been working a little bit hand in hand behind the scenes in the tournament industry. And um, tell us a little bit about the Central Carolina Kayak Fishing Club.
Okay. Well, we started in 2020, definitely a child of the COVID shutdown. Uh, I started, there were already established clubs in North Carolina. There was CKA, Carolina Kayak Anglers. There was Queen City, of course, which is huge. And I started CCKF because I kind of had the suspicion. Queen City is in Charlotte. CKA is more triad based, Greensboro area,
Okay.
but they did venture into the Raleigh Durham area some. And I just had a sneaking suspicion that there were anglers that wanted to stay close to Raleigh Durham, and not travel, to Greensboro, travel an hour or so to a tournament, or and also that maybe had not been involved in kayak tournaments previously,
Right.
and thought, if we offered something with less travel and a lower price point, um, that we could kind of be the gateway drug to kayak fishing, kayak tournament fishing, I guess I should say. So that was kind of the impetus in starting it. My son and I were kayak fishing. We had fished some CKA events, and he kept saying, pushing me, why don't you start a tournament trail, closer to home? And I had run other events. I had run golf events. I ran a golf tour for a while,
Okay.
and I'd helped my father-in-law run his bass boat tournament trail, and I knew what was involved with it, so I tried not to do it for a long time, and eventually I just pulled the trigger. So in 2020, we started floating the idea out there and started advertising it a little bit. We had what we call wildcat tournaments, modeled
Mhm.
after some of the bass boat wildcats, where we had a couple tournaments where you would fish from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. And it was based on 3 fish, and it was all old school style tournaments where you pay at the ramp. You bring your pictures of your fish in,
Right.
and we pay out at the ramp. But we also did what we call our first three real tournaments in 2020, September, October, November, I believe, of 2020. We had a Falls Lake tournament, a Jordan Lake tournament, and a Harris tournament,
Okay.
and had the numbers were very encouraging at that time. I think the very first tournament we had 26 anglers show up.
Wow, that's great.
Um, and it's funny now, if I have 26 anglers, I'm disappointed. And it's hard, it's just hard to keep in perspective. Hey, we started this as something small.
Right.
So why would we be disappointed if we still have 26 anglers showing up? Like it's actually less work if 26 anglers show up.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so we're now about to wrap up the 2024 season, which would be our fourth full point trail season.
Mhm.
I hesitate. I haven't said this is our fifth year, since that first year was kind of a proof of concept year.
Right.
But we wrap up here in September 7th with our eighth tournament of the year. And then we'll have what we call our Tournament of Champions, just always wanting to do things a little bit different. We don't call it the Tournament of Champions. We call it the Clash of the Titans,
There you
uh,
go.
that we will have also in September, and be wrapped up for the season.
So now that you've gotten through your initial 26 anglers. What's your average angler count that you're looking at some of your events?
So this year we've averaged 43 anglers per event.
Okay.
Um, we had a peak attendance of 76, but that was actually a joint tournament with Foothills Kayak Association out of the western part of the state and with CKA, Carolina Kayak Anglers. We had that on Falls Lake, and we
Okay.
had 76. Our biggest event ever was 77, which was back in 2021. Um, and that was at Lake Randleman, and that lake wasn't uh, isn't designed to handle 77 kayak anglers because it's a single boat ramp.
Oh my
At,
goodness.
at
Wow.
the electric only side of Randleman, it is a just one driveway down to the water with one single ramp, and we had 7 guys went to the regular bass boat ramp, and 70 of us were at the little what they call Southwest Park ramp,
Oh
and
my
it
goodness.
took 2 hours just to get everybody on the water to get their boats launched. It took 2 hours.
Wow. I mean, I
So
couldn't even imagine the logistical nightmare of that.
yeah, so September 7th, we go back to Randleman for the first time since then. I said we won't have another one there. Nothing against the lake. We love the lake. It was about us and being able to handle, the logistics of it. With our average, we started seeing the average attendance drop last year a little bit, and
Okay.
this year it's been down. Um, I think the fishing industry as a whole is seeing a little bit of a drop. The post
Right.
COVID, during COVID, everybody wanted to get out and do stuff, and so we had a boom. Even the retailers or the manufacturers, are seeing a drop in business because everybody bought fishing rods during COVID. Everybody
Right.
bought kayaks during COVID, and so
Yeah.
now even marketplace is flooded with used. Um,
Yeah. The inventory is crazy through Marketplace.
Yeah, yeah. So but yeah, this year, I mean, I'm still proud of what we've done this year, 43 average. So
Yeah.
definitely better than 26, and we've got a good core group of guys. We've got 38 that are signed up for our Angler of the Year contest, our points
Awesome.
race. So
That's really good.
that's actually as high as we've ever had signed up for the full series. So
That's great. Now, I mean, you're really you're going from the bottom and building everything in there, and then on top of that, you've got 2 really massive clubs or organizations right around you. So
yeah, yeah.
so you're right in the middle of the state here in North Carolina, and it is interesting to see the demographics change because I mean, obviously, I'm in the Charlotte area, so I know the
Mhm.
Queen City group very very well. I've worked a lot with them with the KFL and different things like that, and the individuals there. So the interesting part is me coming in from South Florida and learning more about you guys and the groups and the organizations that are around you, and then showcasing them here. Now, tell us a little bit about what you guys have planned for you probably having you're probably already working on your schedule trying to get things solidified for next year so you can post that up soon so that way everybody kind of gets some plans. But what do you guys have planned to help with the um, influx of anglers that are starting to see your club a lot more? Right.
Just continue a lot of the same, really, as logistically, and we are looking. Every year you have to make some tweaks.
Hmm.
So this year we ran into a situation where I've had to tweak a few of the rules.
Right.
Um, and that's an ongoing thing. Of course, when you write your rules, there's always a clause you put in there that we can add new rules at any time necessary, to deal with growth and that kind of thing.
Right.
Um, I've thought a lot about how to kind of simplify things a little more for next year. And
Okay.
I'm kicking around a lot of ideas, but I haven't settled on anything yet. I told some guys the other day, I said, I'm thinking about not even really trying to go after sponsorships for the trail next year. And just more of the trail be, you pay in your tournament fees and we pay out the tournament fees.
Right.
And um, but it's hard. It's hard to keep it simple when there's so many people that want to be a part of it. And I'm glad they are. I'm glad they've responded positively to it. But
What makes it difficult for you as a club, as a person that's going out and getting a club and making a decision and possibly not going after sponsors next year? What makes that decision even a thought in your process for the anglers that are outside kind of looking in on being a tournament director?
It is actually seeking and gathering sponsorships is actually the hardest part of the whole deal. And basically a one man show. I've got some core guys that help me out a little bit on things we do. But I'm the only tournament director that we've had. I've just run it as a one man show. I know you guys are associated with Paddle and Fin.
Hmm.
This past year, I went on to the one thing that's helped me tremendously is I went on to the Tourney X directors group. There is a Tourney X has a Tourney X group for everyone, and then they have one that's just directors.
Right.
And I said, "Hey, I'm looking to swap judging duties with another trail possibly." And so Susie Roloff, who has judged a lot of the Paddle and Fin noobs events,
Hmm.
she's with Kayak Bass League out of Illinois and Wisconsin. We worked out a deal to swap judging duties. So I judged their events, and they judged mine. Schedule permitting. That's taken a lot of pressure off of me because I had gotten to the point where when I couldn't find someone to judge, I was trying to fish an event and judge the event on the
Hmm.
water.
Yeah.
So once an hour or once every 45 minutes, I would pull up the app. Well,
Yeah.
then once you start getting 65, 70 anglers consistently,
You're not
judging
fishing.
now is a full day thing.
Right.
Luckily, it's back down a little bit. Um, Prior to that, I had actually found a nonprofit organization, um, and we had taken a set amount of money, $2 out of every entry fee, and I said, "Hey," and they were it was kayak fishing with Christ. They were
Yeah.
originally based in North Carolina. So we worked out a deal with them. They provided a judge, and then we made a $2 per angler contribution to them to their nonprofit,
Yeah.
and thanking them. And that worked out well for both of us. They made, we basically gave them about $1,000 over the course of that season. I think it was just short of 1,000, but when you're averaging 70, 65, 70 anglers an event, and then you have 8, 9 events,
Yeah.
we at $2 each, we made them
Every little bit counts for those
yeah.
nonprofits. Yeah.
But this year, we've struggled a little bit this year. We've got one sponsor. Basically, I know that it was the same with Foothills and CKA, that we all made the assumption. They said that they were going to sponsor us. We made the assumption that it was going to be the same, and then we didn't get anything out of them this year. Not that we're not looking to get things from people. This sponsorship, there was no cash involved at all.
Yeah.
But we were not able to give away things from them. And you have sponsors that commit, and then for one reason or another, right before the season starts, they have to back out, and you've
Right.
already generated graphics and these types of things. We actually we have the way we've done it. I've had a title sponsor, which was a monetary sponsorship,
Hmm.
and we've used that to pay for Adobe Suite, to do the
Right.
Photoshop and all that. We've used it to pay the StreamYard costs,
Correct.
just offset expenses of the club so that we could keep more of the entry fees, pay back to the anglers.
Hmm.
Uh, we had a new sponsor commit this year, and then it was only a week and a half later, they came back and said, "We can't commit."
Oh,
And
wow.
so then
Yeah.
I was scrambling. I was thinking, well, we're going to go this year without a title sponsor, and another sponsor, 4-7 Lures, which is just a local bait maker, um, just happened to contact us out of the blue. Like, I didn't go after them; they contacted us and said, "What sponsorships do you have available?" And I listed, and we talked through it. And he said, "Well, I'll take that title sponsorship."
Oh, that's great.
So that worked out well for us, and I think it's worked out well for him. His business has definitely grown this year, but
Good.
he was not involved just with us. Um, he was our title sponsor, but he also sponsored some YouTubers.
Okay.
directly, as well as other, both CKA and Upstate. I believe it's called Upstate out of South Carolina,
Okay.
UKA, Upstate Kayak Association, and Foothills. He's given baits away to all these clubs,
Wow.
way for drawings and prizes. And I've definitely seen his business growing as a result. But that's some of the challenge, right? I never feel great asking people to be a sponsor,
Right.
especially when you're looking at the monetary side of it. Hey, have you got anything we can give away? That's one thing. Um,
Correct.
but two, I also feel um, a deep responsibility to those people because they're giving us something. We need to give them something in return. And what that is basically advertising.
Yeah.
So I always feel like, am I doing enough to help push these sponsors? And we've got a limited niche of anglers, and the thing, like if you have a kayak store as a sponsor, well, not everybody's going to buy a kayak every year.
Right. Right.
And we did have a kayak store as a sponsor for either 2 or 3 years, and it it there was no conversation from them that said we don't want to sponsor you anymore. It was more on my side saying, look, I don't think I'm driving enough business to you.
Correct. Right.
I feel guilty taking these monetary payments for you. I only know of, once it became a sponsorship, I really only personally know of like 3 or 4 people that went and bought a kayak, and I thought,
Mhm.
well, I don't think I'm giving them a good return on their investment. And
Yeah.
so yeah, the combination of almost the guilt of begging people for things, and then two, just how much work it is to get sponsors.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and
I
that's
was
one
just
of the
trying to
hardest
think,
that's the hardest thing is getting sponsors on board and committing for an entire season or a year or however long or 6 tournaments or
right?
whatever you have going on. It is a
It,
lot. It's a lot,
it is. It
and
is.
especially like you said, you're doing it one man, one person show here, and it's trying to get all this stuff done on your off time from doing work and things like that, so it is difficult, and sponsorship is, and we're seeing that throughout the entire industry too. Sponsorship is coming down a little bit because of the economy and everything else right
Yeah.
now.
Oh,
So
100%. Yeah.
everybody is feeling a little bit of that pinch, and everybody's being very cautious of what they're agreeing to. So I actually commend you for wanting to take it back almost grassroots and just do it completely in house and keep it there.
Oh, I'll tell you this. If we could still have the tournaments where everybody showed up in the morning, paid their fee, everyone launched from the same boat ramp and
Right.
came back to the same boat ramp. If we could do it that old school, I would go back to that format. Now the value that your different apps have added, whether it be Tourney X or Fishing Chaos, and there's others out there.
Right.
Judging now has become much simpler and much
Right.
faster when it comes to the logistics of the tournament. You're
Yeah.
not having to sit there at hey, top 5 guys. So what we do when we do a wildcat and we do a 3-hour tournament, basically, if we do one on a weekend where we just say, hey, we're just going to show up and fish, it might be 4 or 5 hours, but there's no points involved in that. And points are another thing that really complicates
Everything.
judging
Yeah.
these tournaments
Right.
because you have to judge everyone, as opposed to when we go to the Wildcats. When we get back in, I just ask everybody, how much did you have? How
Right.
much did you have? How much? And then I only actually judge the 3 or 5 guys that are going to place in the money,
Correct. Yeah.
because if you're saying you're in first place, okay, let me check your fish. Let me make sure that they are what they are. Mouths are closed. It's touching the line, that kind of thing. Those are pretty quick. But when you're doing, when you got to judge everybody in the tournament, um, you have to look at all of them. So that's where our apps have come in. Now during COVID, when you didn't want more than a few people gathered together at any one spot, that was another big value of Tourney X and Fishing Chaos, because
Right.
everybody could go to their own launch point,
Correct.
right? And you weren't gathering in groups of 20 or 30 people. I've been to launches where there were 1 or 2 of us launching from a particular launch now.
Yeah.
Um, so that has opened it up. It's opened up more of the lake to be fished.
Correct.
Along, so have motors, but but there's still even a limitation with a motor when you launch from one ramp, and that's the official ramp. People are limited in how far they can go. That we still do that with our Clash of the Titans,
Okay.
because we want that tournament. That's kind of the championship. We
It's got
want
to be
that to be
hard,
as
right?
much of an even playing field as
Yeah.
possible. So we say, okay, everybody, we're going to launch. It's also a limited field of about 20 to 25 anglers. So we
Okay.
say, okay, we're going to launch on this ramp, and check in is back at this ramp at this time. And but yeah, I just always look to, like, how can I make it simple again? Um,
Yeah,
so it
because
doesn't.
we can go to tournaments and they can be pretty complicated.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, some of them get really, really complicated.
Yeah.
There's a lot more things you can offer now, like biggest fish every hour is
Right.
a thing. Like CKA is doing more of that now, but that's a lot more judgment you have to do, right? I mean,
Right.
and now we're running into situations where, uh, specifically on Tourney X, uh, our big bass rules have always said if there's a tie, the next biggest bass is the tiebreaker.
Okay.
So what's your second? So if you catch a 22-inch bass, the tiebreaker, it'd be, okay, you got two guys with 22 inches, and then one of them, his next fish is 19 and 3/4, and the other one is 18. Well, the
Right.
guy with the 19 and 3/4, he wins. But Tourney X, the way it's natively built into their software, it's who turned in the fish first.
The time. Yes, sir.
And that we've never had that come up until and I don't know if it's always been that way in Tourney X, or we've just been lucky that the guy that had the next biggest bass just
Was a
happened to turn in his fish first. But our last tournament, that came up, and I'm like, well, if you look at our rules, it's next biggest fish.
Right.
And I don't know if it was because of us or if they had seen it somewhere else, but that actually came out on the Tourney X page, a poll. How would you want big bass tiebreaker, or how do you break a big bass tiebreaker? And the overwhelming, it was over 60% of the three responses, of the three choices. Over 60% was next biggest bass.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
then, and my comment to
So they're
Dwayne
gonna,
was, if
yeah.
we could configure that, if you had that as a configuration, like, ask when we set up a tournament, what's your big bass tiebreaker? But that
Yeah.
gets complicated in the back end of the app, right? There's a lot of
Right.
coding that you would have
Yeah.
to drive that, but
That's actually that's a very unfamiliar problem to have because, like you said, we've never had that problem until this last time because it just probably happened to fall in place with the algorithm of the app and everything
yeah,
for the
yeah.
time to where you never had to really issue, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, here's one issue. And what Mitch is trying to say, everybody, is that every season is always different. There's always something and always something evolving and changing. And that's the reason why you see clubs do have to make amendments and or changes every year to the rules because apps change, things change, and we don't see or we don't catch them quick enough. And something like that happens.
And one thing I did when we started CCKF, um, of course, I modeled it on other clubs.
Right.
Um, CKA, we almost consider CKA a sister club. One, from Greensboro to Raleigh is 45 minutes apart.
Correct. Yes.
So we're very close to each other geographically, and we have a lot of crossover of anglers. So we've been very careful, not to schedule events over the top of each other. Right? We always discuss. We even get with Vinny with Queen City, and we
Mhm.
get with Foothills, the four of us, and we basically publish all of our schedules and start looking at the dates. And you know, if I have to be on the same weekend as another tournament trail, if I have to do it the same weekend as Queen City, I try to do it like when they're on a weekend, maybe they're in South Carolina,
Right.
like not close to us. Same thing with Foothills. So my main priority is I'm not stepping on any of CKA's tournaments. And then I juggle it the best I can with Foothills and Queen City, to try not to pull anybody away from theirs. When I started, I was the new kid on the block, and the first thing I did was reach out to CKA, before I scheduled anything and said, hey, here's my intent. One, I'm going to be at a cheaper price point. I'm trying to attract some anglers that haven't been fishing tournament trails, and I will never schedule a tournament on the same weekend as you because I'm not in competition with you. I'm
Right.
trying another grassroots, growth of the sport, hopefully. But where I started with that was a lot of my rules came from Carolina kayak anglers because of the crossover of the anglers. We don't want to confuse them. So the first year or two, they had an 8-inch minimum and I had a 10-inch minimum. I was fishing their tournaments and throwing fish back and not taking pictures of them because they weren't 10 inches. And I
Right.
actually skunked at some tournaments because I threw all my fish back and I was like, wow, there were several of those that were 8.5, 9 inches that I could have counted. Um, this year we've got the same minimums. We've had the same minimums last year, but there are little differences. So when we had that joint tournament at Falls Lake, we had 2 different big bass winners because 2 guys were tied, and each of us, we ran separate tournaments, but if you signed up for both, there were additional incentives.
Okay.
And so if you were signed up for the CKA tournament, it was who turned in the big bass first. And if you signed up with us, it was who had the next largest bass. It actually worked out well because we were able to make nice big bass payments to 2 separate anglers.
Oh,
Two
wow.
two different anglers walked away with around $300 each for big bass.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, so it worked out well for that. But then when you have one of those anglers that mostly fishes them and then comes to the other, they have a hard time. A lot of times they're like, just,
Right.
oh, the rules are the same. Not always. So
Now, have you thought about maybe changing that where it is a conjunction so that way there wasn't any difference in the crossover, or you just like it because of where you're located and kind of where they're located? It's kind of like the bass size are a little bit better.
it's I had thought about it. I mean, yes, I've definitely considered it. Um, CKA is a KBF affiliated club, so
Understood.
they
Okay.
have all of the KBF rules. And when I started, I tweaked a few of them, that I felt like were better for more casual guys.
Yeah.
Um, and just haven't gotten back around to saying, hey, let's change them and make them match up. We did take a vote. Now it's been a couple years, but it's still the same core group of guys. I would think we took a vote very early on, and I was like, hey, do you want us to try and become affiliated with KBF or with BASS? Is there some larger trail that you would like to see us be a feeder to? Um,
Right.
and the response was overwhelmingly no. Let's just stay a little grassroots trail.
Well, that's awesome.
And we have guys that state, hey, the appeal of your club is the grassroots feel to it. It feels like the old school. Even though we've got some of the more modern things, it still kind of retains that old school feel.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that's just kind of become our identity, and I hate to mess with that too much at this point. So
Well, and that's great. I mean, honestly, you asked the members and they said, "Hey, let's keep it very grassroots. Let's do this." It's more. I think it's more inviting for a new angler to come in and learn that way than to go into some of the bigger ones and have a lot of the bigger rules you can learn from your core group of local individuals down here, and then start to move your way into the bigger trails and
yeah,
series.
yeah. And we have now when you look at one of our tournaments, you'll have guys that this is their very first tournament, and typically it's more than one guy at every tournament we have. It's more than one person that this is their first tournament. But then
Mhm.
we've also got our guys that Basscast was doing their North Carolina angler ratings. So we'll have the guys that are in might be in the top 5 of anglers in North Carolina fishing the same tournament as these are some of the guys' very first tournament they've ever fished.
That's awesome.
And I like that. I like the diversity that we have. I do like to think that we're a kind of a, you know, we offer a little bit of something for everyone, but I do like that core that we have of, first time tournament anglers and maybe not always as serious as it can get when you're out there fishing for, I mean, don't get me wrong. When we have a good amount of anglers, we have good payouts.
Right.
Um, and it's a good amount of money, and you have to keep that in mind and be responsible about it. But at the same time, it's a $45 total entry fee. That's big bass and everything. Um, it doesn't get as serious as a BOS or a BASS.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that. There's a little it's enough pressure to make it fun, but not so much that if you don't win anything, you're out a whole lot of money. So
Correct. Correct. Yeah, that makes things a lot more easier, especially nowadays anglers are looking to be a little bit more conservative on their pocket anyway. So you're and they're getting into this thing. Like you said, they're getting into this for the first time. They've gone out, they purchased all this stuff, and now they look at a bigger series like that and they're like, whoa, that is way too expensive to get
yeah,
into.
I've said many, many times, if we could have done this as a meetup group, I would have done that and not had any money on the line. But
Yeah.
people don't show up. It's proven that people don't show up if there's no money on the line. If you just say, "Hey, let's all get together and go fishing on Saturday," you get a few people.
Right.
But you say, "Hey, we're having a tournament," then you get, 2, 3, 4 times as many people show up. So
Yeah, we're creatures of habit. We like that competition. We like that,
yeah,
and
yeah.
we did this just like you. We did the same thing. We started in Florida at the same time. We tried to do meetups. I'm like, yeah, we got a few. We it worked out well, and then we're like, oh, a meetup and a tournament just happened to break out, and then we're like, okay, wait a minute, let's take this up a notch. And
Everybody's got side pots going. If it's
yeah,
just a meetup, they're all saying, "Hey, let's throw $5 in, and whoever
right.
catches the biggest fish wins," or
And
whatever.
and
Yeah,
that is fine. That's all part of the culture. That's part of the community. That's what we like about it too. I mean, that happens. But then everybody's like, "Oh, let's do a real trail. Let's do a real series and a real
yeah.
thing." And just like you, we started around that time. But yeah, no, it's really interesting to see how your club. So why is Central Carolina kayak fishing? Why do you call it that triangle? Tell everybody what that area you're kind of in.
Yeah, so, it's kinda model it's Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill,
Okay.
and they call that the triangle area of North Carolina, for several reasons. One, you have a major university in all 3 of those towns. So you have UNC, Duke, and NC State.
Okay.
So, academically and athletically, they compete with each other. And there's Duke and UNC are closest together, but it's only maybe, 14, 15 miles across there to NC State.
Right.
So geographically, it forms a triangle on the map.
Okay.
Also, back, I want to say, I don't know if it was the 60s or 70s, um, a doctor and some investors got together and purchased land that's in the middle of those 3 cities, Research Triangle Park, which was basically the Silicon Valley East.
Okay.
Has been anchored by companies like Cisco and IBM and Northern Telecom back in the day, GlaxoSmithKline. I mean, large companies
Huh.
are here, and they call that the They also call that the triangle. A lot of people don't even refer to it as RTP; they just say the triangle. But yeah, that's where the name comes from. We call it the Triangles Kayak Trail.
Okay.
Um, but Central Carolina is more of a shout out to the town. I live south of the triangle in Sanford, North Carolina,
Okay.
and Sanford has always been Central Carolina. You always hear them say Sanford is the geographical center of the state of North Carolina. I think that's more of an urban. It's pretty close,
I was gonna
but I
say it's
don't.
close. It's not
I
exactly the center.
don't think it's the exact center. But even the community college here is Central Carolina Community College, and you have lots of business. Central Carolina this, Central Carolina that. So I was just trying to say, hey, we're kind of in the central part of the state, kind of in the middle of the state. But then the tagline was the Triangles Tournament Trail because we were focused on the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area lakes,
Mhm.
especially in the beginning. We've got 3 great fishing lakes here between Falls Lake, Harris Lake, and Jordan Lake, which are coincidentally the 3 lakes when MLF was coming here with the Bass Pro Tour. Those are the lakes they targeted, right?
Okay.
They did those 3 lakes, and we were doing each one of those lakes twice per season, and then having 2 events that were not on those lakes. And the guys finally said, "Hey, I don't want to fish these lakes twice every year from now on." So, now we just hit them once, and this year we ventured to Lake Gaston for the first time.
Okay.
We also went to Hyco Lake last year and again this year. So we're venturing out a little farther. but we don't really go any farther west than Lake McIntosh is a staple for us, and then we'll go to Randleman.
Okay.
But I don't like going. I try not to go there often because now we're getting into CKA's core territory.
Okay.
So just trying to keep our own identity and not copy what they do. We tried going east. We went to Tar River Reservoir,
Okay.
and just didn't have the turnout there. That's for me. It was about an hour and 20 minutes east of here. We didn't get a lot of guys show up. We've tried ourselves, and CKA are trying to help trails in the eastern part of the state get started.
Okay.
Yeah, Jeremy Hicks, who fishes a lot of KBF and all that, he started one last year and just never could get a big turnout. Daniel Kaysen, if that's how you pronounce his last name, he's got one based out of Wilmington now.
Okay.
And he's getting more participation. But I think once you get past 95, everybody just wants to fish saltwater. I really
that's probably
more
true.
of the issue that we've got is that once you cross 95, you've got more people that are fishing for trout and reds and flounder.
Right.
And maybe not as many freshwater opportunities. I mean, there are some Sutton Lake, Lake Waccamaw. There are lakes in that direction around Wilson. You've got Buckhorn Reservoir that really kicks out some nice fish.
But you're right. They're mostly like saltwater anglers out there. There's a lot of I understand that one. Yeah, I understand that one coming from Florida. So good luck. There's saltwater all the way around us. It's been really interesting to watch and really exciting to watch your club kind of grow. I'm going to bring up to give everybody a little bit of where they can find you, how they can find you if they want to take part in it, and I'm going to bring up your Facebook group here.
Okay, yeah. So obviously, number one is we're on Facebook. You just search Central Carolina Kayak Fishing. We have a page and a group. I originally started it as a page, and I just thought I'll put information out there, but a page is much less interactive. But you can see on our page, we've got our sponsors at the top. We've got our schedule at the top. We post our results and we make we make posts on the page, and then we'll share those posts to the group. The group has a lot more interaction.
Yes.
So the group is really good for, hey, I'm new to kayak fishing, and I'm in this area. One thing we've got is a really great group of anglers who will just meet up with new anglers. Our guys that are in the AOI, that are leading the AOI race, will take you on a lake, show you exactly what bait to throw, exactly which piece of structure to throw it at. I mean, that's one of the biggest things I've always said about the kayak community is it is a community,
right?
As opposed to I threw a bubblegum Cinco on that pond out behind the post office, like the bass boat guys would say.
Come on, we know that one.
They don't. There's just a lot more sharing that goes on in the kayak world, and the group's good for that. And it's good to get new people introduced. We've also got a web page, centralcarolinakayakfishing.com. That's where we have our AOI standings posted all the time. We have our rules posted there. Again, our schedule. So it's a good resource. The combination of it and the Facebook work really well to get the word out for us. We have an Instagram, and admittedly, I'm not as active on Instagram as I should be. The Facebook gets the majority of us. The Instagram, I'll post, here's an upcoming tournament on Instagram. I'll post, here's the winners. I'll post a picture of big fish. But across our social media platforms, we really do have a pretty big audience. We have a YouTube, and really the only thing that YouTube is getting used for right now is when we do a StreamYard, like a angler meeting before the tournament.
Right.
I'll broadcast it on YouTube and Facebook simultaneously because not everybody is into Facebook, but YouTube, anybody can go and watch something on YouTube, and you can replay it really easily. So, I do have a background in video and photography. And so I've always thought I would grow the YouTube channel into something more. I'd have drone footage of the weigh-ins but it's just hard. It's hard to find time to do it all and then juggle it with your full-time job and your family. So
Yes, sir. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Well, if anybody is actually looking for, and you're in the North Carolina in the Triangle area, and you're looking for, or maybe you're coming down to visit, or maybe going to relocate to the North Carolina state, take a look at Central Carolina kayak fishing in that Triangle area. If you're going to Raleigh, Durham, or what's the Chapel Hill, excuse me,
yep,
and
yep.
make sure you're going to be in that area. Reach out to Mitch, get in there, and start learning about those waters, because some of those lakes, I definitely know, the lakes that you had on there that you said, McIntosh, Randleman, those are some really, really good bass fishing lakes.
The
So
McIntosh, if you look at the numbers, not including Queen City, but I don't think the Queen City numbers would affect it.
mhm.
If you look at kayak bass tournaments in the state of North Carolina, Lake McIntosh has produced the biggest bags that any of us have seen.
Okay.
Uh, and most people don't. I probably shouldn't say that because now a bunch of people are going to start going to McIntosh,
I
and
might,
I'll get
I
people
might make a
mad.
trip.
But yeah, between CKA, CCKF of all these trails, if you compare the winning bags, I want to say that it might be 4 out of the 5.
Wow.
Um, but if you're going to win a tournament at McIntosh, you've got to be over 100 inches, and it's usually 105 to 106 inches out of McIntosh to win the tournament. Now, there's off days, right? Weather patterns, different things can affect it, but
Right.
McIntosh turns out some serious numbers.
So what is, and I'm gonna play devil's advocate a little bit, because I'm coming from the South, so I'm used to
Right.
like 20, 21s, 22s. What's the
Yeah.
average size that's coming up out of McIntosh in some of those areas?
For our winning bags,
Yeah.
well over 20 inches a piece. I mean, it's
Wow.
like the last winter, all 5 fish were over 20 inches. Um,
Wow. Okay. Well,
which
that's a huge exception for North Carolina, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Because normally if you're in the mid 80s,
Right.
right, you're really, really competitive in the mid 80s. And so, to get to come out in the mid 80s at McIntosh, you might be middle of the pack.
Wow.
And
Okay. Yeah.
or then you
That's
could have someone like me that might have 30 inches and at least I've got a couple points out of it, but it's,
Well, that's the joys of, I mean, this is the reason why we host these shows like this, everybody. So that way you can kind of learn more about these areas and different things and different lakes, learn from the tournament directors that take these organizations to these lakes and to be there. Mitch, I want to thank you so much for joining me. It's been an honor just to get to sit down and talk to you, see you face to face for the first time. We've talked a lot through Messenger and different things like that, and doing things in the industry already. So it's nice to be able to have you on board, have you on the show. Look forward to learning more from you about it. Would love to have you back on again, talk more about the club and just fishing in general. And definitely would like to get you out there to the masses of the Paddle and Fin Network so they can start learning who tournament directors are and the clubs are.
it's truly been my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, and I really appreciate this new series you're doing for the grassroots. Um, that's it's kind of the backbone of what we've got going
Yeah.
on, right? Like you have to start somewhere, and so thank you for getting that out, and I've truly enjoyed being here.
Well, thank you very much. So always make sure, if you want to sit back and enjoy us on a weekly basis, I'm going to be here every 2 weeks, putting out new content on the Final Cast and through the Paddle and Fin Network. Again, Mitch, thank you very much. Hope you guys have a wonderful week. Get out there, enjoy yourselves, and always remember, wear your PFD when you go out there, because right now there's a lot of anglers not coming back home. So go wear your PFD, go back to your loved ones, and enjoy your day out on the water. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of your week.